Hi, I'm Ember Conley, your host for Political Peaks. Today, we're joined by Jon Huntsman, candidate for governor and our former governor of Utah. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ember. It's a great pleasure to be with you.
Well, you are definitely in the midst of campaigning and really explaining your campaign around what your platform is. And of course, our economy has been one of the number one things that you've talked about, that you've shared your passion about, as well as lots around mental health. So I want to start with the economy of where we are right now as we get out into the next stages of phasing out of our COVID. And talk to us a little bit about what you think are next steps to make Utah that vibrant state that we love and believe in.
Well, I think the most important thing, Ember, is to have an economy that will sustain and support our aspirations as people. So if we want the best education in the world, we've got to be able to afford it. If we want the kinds of infrastructure that will support one of the fastest growing states in America, we've got to have an economy that will support that. So first and foremost, for me, coming out of the COVID-19 hole, where unemployment is 10%, maybe beyond, and 35% in certain corners of our state, is to make sure that we have a real plan. And mine is to double our state's GDP from $180 billion to $500 billion over the next 10 years around three basic industries that are some of the largest and most important for our nation, making sure that Utah here we're able to play a significant role in their development. One would be biotechnology and health sciences. The other would be finance, and the third would be defense. They're all critically important to the future of our country, and I want to see Utah step up and play a significant role in each, which will be a massive job creator, higher paying jobs, and will allow us to move into the decades ahead, I think, in a really important preferred position compared to where a lot of states are and will be.
You know, you talked about that vibrant economy, and much of our state is rural. How do you plan to address providing more opportunity for our rural economies?
You know, it's a great question, and I think it will happen based upon what we're just on the cusp of experiencing. First of all, agriculture is 20% of our state's GDP, largely rural, and I think we're just beginning to compete in the agriculture sector. So if you look at agriculture compared to technology, which is 18% of our state's GDP, there's so much we can do just in agriculture alone. But we are about to see over the next few years, I think, the greatest movement of labor and capital and manufacturing we've seen since World War II. And that means in the confusion and chaos that is the world and even our own country, I like to see hope and opportunity there. So to take a line from Shakespeare, sweet are the uses of adversity. So I want to direct capital and labor and manufacturing into the state. So when we're entering a period where you no longer have to sit in your corporate headquarters, but can work from wherever you want to work, where you're going to have flexibility in terms of capital flows and manufacturing, the Wasatch Front is maxed out. And if we're going to grow and expand as we need to, and as we will, our rural communities are going to experience an uplift with the kind of labor flexibility, living where you want, enjoying nature and some of the most beautiful land on display anywhere in the world, while also being able to connect with your profession. So I think we're beginning an era here in our state and even our country where I think our economy is going to be transformed and look a lot different. And I think the benefits will certainly be there for our rural communities.
Well, being a career educator and specifically in rural areas, it has been a challenge to be able to provide a strong public education. And talk to us a little bit around what you would see as far as being able to address, of course, being one of the lowest funded states, but yet we're still getting great outcomes. We have a massive teacher shortage, and that's not only seen within our K-12 public education, but also in our higher education. This is definitely nothing new to you. What do you see as that next step to be able to get us to that next level?
Well, what do we aspire to? We aspire to become the crossroads of the world in Utah. We've long been known as the crossroads of the West, and that's what I always referred to it as my family did, as did everybody when I was growing up. But I think we're beyond those days. We should aspire to become and be known as the crossroads of the world. And as such, it will inform us, Ember, economically, it will inform us in terms of education, travel, tourism, and everything else. We should aspire to world class education. And what does that mean? It means that our weighted pupil unit, our expenditure per pupil, must be improved. We are way low, as you mentioned rightly. That doesn't mean that our outcomes necessarily are going to be that bad. We have low expenditures and we have pretty good outcomes, but we should expect better in both categories. And the only way we're going to get there is by doubling our state's economic output so that we have more money that we can use for education. So my own belief, having raised 7 kids and all of them learning a little differently in the classroom, having experienced in our own family homeschooling, public schooling, private schooling, international schools, even military academies, each one of my kids learns differently, and we're no different than any other family. So we have to have a lot of creative options for our kids that are flexible and that recognize that every person learns a little bit differently. And I think that inevitably will take us toward more focus on the front end of education, where early childhood development, I think, is absolutely critical in nailing areas of numeracy and literacy to give kids a great head start. And then the back end of our public education, I think, is really important. A closer relationship with higher education, for example, that allows kids as early on as they can to begin getting credits in our 2 and 4 year institutions
Awesome.
so they can begin to get a head start on their career choices.
Well, you've definitely had experience at the state level, at the federal level, and the international level. And one of the phenomena, I guess you could say, that I saw when I was working with national policy was that there were different pots of money that would be set aside for education, for public health, for different pieces of infrastructure. But really, in reality, when we look at all of those pots together, we're still addressing those same issues, and that's our families. And you've really taken to the campaign trail that idea of mental health, and you shared a story that was personal in your own family with suicide. What are our next steps to really be able to provide adequate treatment and support for families, and to help families move out of that stigmatism of that we're embarrassed or something, that it's something we've done wrong?
You know, it's such a good and important question, Ember. Right now, we're the buckle of the suicide belt in the United States. If you look at the 10 to 25-year-old group, suicide is a leading cause of death. And I say we're too good as a state, we're too good as people to ever allow that to define us. And as you say, it's a personal thing for me. My sister died of a drug overdose 10 years ago, which was preceded by mental illness issues that we all witnessed and saw. But, it was one of these things where, you know, nobody was there to demystify it for us. Nobody was there to say, there are things you can do about it, that there are services that you can seek. We were just not willing, and I guess downright embarrassed, to even share our own story with other people. And it wasn't until just recently that our family was able to really talk openly about it. And as I go around the state, I hear a lot of similar stories. Every family has a story, every neighborhood, every community. And this all begins with an effort throughout the state to destigmatize. We have to demystify. We have to have a conversation about what it is we're talking about. People have to be willing to speak out freely and openly about what the issues might be, so that we can then begin to manage them properly through the right kind of treatment, which I think we're just beginning to understand. So it's a combination of So if I were governor, and when I am governor, again, I really do want to lead this state in a declaration of war against this insidious problem. And the best way to do that is to talk about it and to speak openly about it and to make sure that families don't feel isolated or alone when they're having these kinds of situations, but understand that there is a way forward and there may be resources that are available. And that last part is where I think we struggle as a state. We don't have a long-term plan on mental health. We don't treat it like water or education or electricity, where you've got a longer-term plan. We need it. We need a 5 to 10 year plan to see what our state needs in terms of support, psychiatrists, nurse practitioners, so that we can care for our people. Insurance policies are not equal when it relates to your physical health versus your mental health. That has to be addressed as well. So much is out there to do. And when people see me as a candidate, I just want them to know that I'm going to be thinking about the economy first and foremost to pay the bills, but I'm also going to be thinking a lot and talking a lot about mental health.
Well, I applaud your efforts in that and the courage to at least bring the conversation to the state level that so many families, including my own, have had to maneuver through. So thank you for that. I just want to say thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and to understand really where you want to take Utah for the next 4 years.
Thanks, Amber. It's been a great pleasure to be with you. This is the greatest state in America, and it's a great honor to once again run for the highest office in the land. It's a labor of love for me, truly.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Conley, your host for Political Peaks. Remember to watch us live on our channels and follow us at Park City TV on Facebook and Twitter.